All right, welcome back. It's time for another TI11 preview. This time we're going to be taking a look at the team that won their regional qualifiers in the Chinese region, RNG. And what makes this team so exciting in particular is that there are so many members on their roster that have come so close to a championship, but just not quite. But before we get into that, of course, a quick little reminder of all the previews I've already done to this point. If you're a fan of any of these teams, feel free to check those out on my channel or link in the description, as well as the link to our Discord. Those being Hikori, Talon, Sonics, Entity, and BetBoom. All of those links are down below. And in the coming few weeks, I will be finishing off the remaining 12 teams. And then once the last chance qualifiers are completed, I'll be doing those two teams as well. So RNG, let's get into it. Taking a first look at where they placed in the DPC, they finished with a total of 738 total points. They were the highest placed team out of all the teams that came through their regional qualifiers to miss out on TI. They finished 3rd place regionally and 15th place internationally, so just missing out on the top 12. The only teams ahead of them that didn't qualify were Virtus Pro and Team Liquid, who will both be playing in the last chance qualifiers. Taking a look at their roster, which again is something that is quite entertaining. Their carry player, who is new, he joined partway through the tour, is in fact the only player on this team who has never played at TI before. And in fact, he hasn't even made it to the actual qualifiers before. The closest he ever gotten was finishing 5th and 8th place in TI9 in the Open Qualifiers. So he was a pretty far ways away, and now he's going to be playing with some of the best players in the Chinese region over the past like half decade or so, maybe even full decade. Some of these players have been playing for a very long time. And those start with Somnus playing position 2, Chalice playing position 3, Kaka on the 4 role, and X Nova playing position 5, as well as Coach Super. And as you'll notice written next to each and every one of their names, each and every one of them has finished 2nd place before at TI, but none of them have ever won. Somnus, Chalice, and X Nova, of course, finished 2nd place with PSG LGD back at TI8 when they lost to OG in a best of 5 in 5 games. We also have Kaka, who finished 2nd place with New B up against Team Liquid at TI7, and even their coach Super finished 2nd place with Vici Gaming in TI4, losing to New B. For Somnus and Super, this will be their 7th time attending the International. Chalice and X Nova, this will be their 3rd, and Kaka, this will be his 6th time. And again, as previously mentioned, Ghost, this will be his 1st International, which is very exciting. And former members of the team throughout this past year that are not here now. Of course, we have God King and Felix Xiaoba. Taking a look at their results now, which are pretty fantastic, pretty consistent, although maybe they didn't end off things as strongly as they were maybe hoping to. For the first tour of the Chinese region, they finished 3rd place in a tiebreaker match. They lose to Aster, so they drop down from 2nd to 3rd. But regardless, it's a 5-2 win record. They earned themselves 120 DPC points right off the bat, which looks really nice for them. And in their regional finals, they make it all the way to the grand finals and lose to PSG LGD. So they finished 2nd place, but they still made it top 2. They still earn themselves another 130 DPC points. So after Tour 1, they're looking pretty good, finishing 3rd place, finishing 2nd place. They've already got 250 DPC points. Things are looking good. Tour 2, they finished 4th place. So they take a bit of a step back, but regardless, they finished top 4, although this was the tour that the Chinese teams unfortunately pulled out of the Stockholm Majors. So even though they would have qualified, they don't end up playing any matches. They don't end up earning any more DPC points, which, you know, that might have been what they needed to get themselves over the hill to making it to TI directly off of points as opposed to coming through those qualifiers. However, they do still earn 80 DPC points from that tour. And in Tour 3, they finished 1st place in the region, and this was fresh off of some roster changes. To this point in the tour, it felt like, in the DPC season, I should say, it felt like that this was a very strong team. They had a lot of really amazing performances. It's just that their carry player at the time, God King, would have really inconsistent results. It was either he was playing really well and the team can really rely on him and surround him and play really awesomely, or he would just crumble and they would rely on him and he would just falter, he would just die in team fights, he would just not have the farm, he would just not be able to compete. And so with that consistency brought in with Ghost coming in playing on their roster, they do very well. They finished 1st place, 5-2 record, 500 DPC points, which is huge for the team. And heading into Arlington Major, again, finishing 1st place in the Chinese region is no small feat. Sure, there were a lot of teams. I think there was like 7 or 6 teams that were all tied, not with the same score, but there were 6 teams that needed tiebreakers. RNG was not one of them. But they do have a pretty tough time at the Arlington Major, going 2-4-2 in the group stage and losing their only match on the main stage, earning 0 DPC points. So throughout the entire DPC season, they end up earning themselves, I believe that is 830 points, and they lose 92 due to their roster changes with God King and Felix Schauba departing from the team. Taking a look now at the results against other teams attending the International this year. This is going to be including teams that are in the last chance qualifiers as well, in which there was a total of 57 games where they went 29-28, so just above 50%. In Tour 1, they end up losing 2-0 to PSG LGD, but they take down Vici Gaming and Aster. I also forgot to write down that this was the one where they lost their tiebreaker match to Aster, so in fact there should be another one written right here. Regardless, in their regionals, they beat Aster twice, 2-1 and 2-0, but they also lose to PSG LGD twice, 0-2 to 0-3. So PSG LGD, they have played them a lot throughout this past year. They haven't beaten them a single time, and that is something that is a little concerning for RNG, where no matter how good they look, they still cannot overcome PSG LGD. Tour 2, they have a nice win over Vici Gaming. They actually have a pretty fantastic start to the tour. They're 4-0. And then they followed it up with 3 very rough losses. The first to PSG LGD, then to Aster, then to Extreme Gaming, who at that point were the new team to make it into the Chinese upper division. For Tour 3, again, having withdrawn from the Stockholm Major, they face off against Vici Gaming, Aster, and Extreme. They take down all 3 of them, and again, things are looking really good. Still can't beat PSG LGD, a 2-0 loss there. Heading into the Arlington Major, they draw against some of the better teams in the DPC with Virtus Pro, Fanatics, Sonics. They even take down Thunder Awaken and Talon, which looked really good for them. But again, PSG LGD, 0-2. They cannot beat this team. OG as well is a team that is known for giving some teams real fits. Entity is one that I can think of, where Entity, you could see their improvement throughout the entire year, and it didn't matter when they were playing OG, it was a loss. They just couldn't beat them. They draw Liquid 1-1, and their only series on the main stage ends up being up against Virtus Pro, a team that they tied in the group stage, but they lose 2-0 to on the main stage. And in the qualifier, the only team that they actually played that is going to be attempting to attend this year's International was Extreme, where they beat them 2-1 in the upper bracket and then 3-0 in the grand finals. Now taking a look at some stats, and this is across every game throughout the past DPC season, in which there were 90 games, 52 wins, and 38 losses. There was also a forfeited series in the second tour, I think, where they had that tiebreaker match, and that's not going to be included on here. Otherwise, it would be 92 games. But for game stats, Radiant, they were 26-24, so just above 50%. But on Dire, they were much higher, 26-14 for a 65% win rate. So a pretty stark difference there. First pick 28-20, and last pick 24-18. For Radiant, first pick they were 15-13, and on Radiant second pick they were even with 11-11. And that is an orientation that has been plaguing quite a few teams, actually. Now that I'm going through and looking at all these team stats, Radiant's second pick looks like it has traditionally been the worst for a lot of these teams. Dire first pick and Dire second pick, 13-7 each for a 65% win rate. Very impressive. For games shorter than 40 minutes, we have 41-26 win rate for 61%, and they're actually below 50% in games that went longer than 40 minutes at 11-12, and that is a huge show of where they would have that inconsistency with their former carry player, God King, where the team would be able to get them to the point where they were going to be able to end the game, but they just didn't have the carry player that was able to follow through. And so games that went longer and longer, it was just as if they were playing a 5v4 at that point, which really sucks to say, but that was in the past, and hopefully they're looking to improve upon that number. This should be a team that isn't afraid to take you to the late game, but as of right now, their stats stand just below 50%. For game ones, they were 22-17, same thing for game twos, and in deciding game threes, they were 8-3, so pretty impressive, a pretty confident tiebreaker match win rate. For average XPM, 2265, that was GPM, average XPM 2775, for an average KDA of 3.57, so that's also quite low, but again, their average match duration being only 37 minutes and 20 seconds is also quite low, so a little bit of an explanation for that. For their hero stats, they picked a total of 100 different heroes over these 90 games, which is pretty crazy that, the meta has been it's felt like the meta's been pretty strict throughout the past year, at least before the qualifiers, and yet you have teams that have picked 100 different heroes in 90 games, which is pretty impressive. For most picked, they had Tiny at 16, Death Prophet at 14, Puck 12, Razor and Queen of Pain, Nyx, and Storm Spirit with 11 picks each, and Pangolier with 10. For their best heroes, Troll Warlord 7-1. Not a hero we've seen a whole lot this past year, but RNG was doing very, very well with it. Necrophos 4-0, Io and Hoodwink 5-1. We then have Queen of Pain who went 8-3, and Pangolier who went 7-3. For their worst heroes, we had Spectre 1-5. Unlike Troll Warlord, that was a hero that probably wasn't getting seen a whole lot for a good reason. Spectre has been a pretty dead hero for a long time now. Alchemist 1-4 and Snapfire 2-6. And for their most banned, they banned a total of 99 different heroes this past year. Templar Assassin with 28. We then have Beastmaster with 27 and Monkey King with 26. So RNG, again, despite their maybe a little bit lackluster performance at Arlington, this is a team that has been coming into this international with a lot of momentum and arguably should have been a team that had already qualified just off of points alone. But, maybe because they didn't play at Stockholm, we didn't end up seeing that. But the fact that the only land that we saw them on was a bit lackluster does leave a little bit of concern with this team. But again, I only have that concern very briefly, and then I take a look at their roster and just the names on that list. This is not a list of players that are going to get nervous playing at TI. They've been here before. Maybe Ghost, maybe their carry player has a rough time, but that's where you're going to have the rest of the team trying to bring that morale up. And obviously, he's earned his position there at the top of the roster for RNG. So for RNG, I'm expecting a good run. I wouldn't be surprised if I see them upper division. Lower division also wouldn't be too surprising. It would more just be a little disappointing, but I'd be very, very shocked if these guys ended up out in the group stage. I think these guys have a very realistic shot at top 6. Again, just taking a look at this roster alone, but also backing it up with these results. Super excited to take a look at how this team will do. Again, notable stats to see on this board. Radiant second pick. Not only for RNG, this has been an orientation that has been pretty bad for a lot of teams. You want to look out for these guys playing Dire. Their win rate on Dire is a lot higher than on Radiant. For first and last pick, there doesn't seem to be such a huge discrepancy, but they're 40-minute games. If they're playing a game that's less than 40 minutes, things tend to work out quite well for them, but as they go on in time, things seem to get worse. And although that problem may be fixed now that God King isn't a part of the team anymore, it is still something to keep an eye on. But other than that, there's really no red flags on this team. I'm super stoked to see how they do. And let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. Again, check out the links for all the previews that I've already done to this point down in the description down below, as well as our Discord. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.